Hi everyone, it's Jerry. This is video 19 from the Beginner to Chess Master playlist, which is a progressive series of videos. And I'd like to share with you a very popular rook and pawn endgame position, this one here, known as the Lucena position. Rook and pawn endgames are the most popular type of endgames in chess. The Lucena position, more specifically, is one of the most popular of them. This position type is one that I have encountered in many of my own games, whether it be over-the-board play, competitive games, tournament games, or online games. This pops up quite a bit, and in short, is a must-know. I will be sharing with you a universal method to winning this type of an endgame. But before I do that, let me go ahead and describe what the Lucena position looks like so that you know when it is present in one of your own games. The primary feature of the Lucena position has one side with a pawn plus, white in this case the stronger side, and the stronger side's king is in front of that pawn. Okay, that right there is the primary feature of the Lucena position. Also, we have the defending side's rook contributing in a way where it is interfering with what it is white would like to do. Well, what is it white would like to do in this endgame? Well, white would like to move the king out of the pawn's way and then push the pawn through. The rook is interfering with that idea. The rook has, we might say, some file influence. Okay? Those are the two key features, I would say, to identifying the Lucena position. Now, in this specific case we're working with, you can also observe the defending side's king is contributing to not allowing the king get out of the pawn's way as well. But we can also have the king elsewhere, maybe somewhere over here, and we would still define this or describe this position type as the Lucena position. Okay? So with that said, let me actually give you just a little bit of a preview of how this position looked just a few moves ago. Nothing sophisticated. I just want to give you a little bit of a taste as to how we got to that position. White being on move, he's getting the pawn rolling, the black king is getting involved, white gets out of the pawn's way, black throws some pressure on the pawn pushes, the rook is there to now have some influence. There we go. Okay, we're at this position, this key position. We want to know how exactly to win it from here. Now, I'd like to make just one adjustment as a start here. Currently, the rook is on g1. Okay, I'm going to shift him over to e1 for just a moment. It's white to move. What would we do here? Now, it may be very tempting to move the white king in this position, seeing that there is this some type of coordinated effort, apparently, with stopping the king from getting out of the pawn's way like so, but there appears to be no one stopping the king from getting out of the pawn's way on this side, so why not just play to king g7 right now? Well, we won't be able to make progress if we move the king to g7 or even g8. Moving the king out of the pawn's way at this moment here will not lead us to any progress. Let's see why. Okay? Suppose king g7. What's the issue with this? We're ready to promote on our next move. Unfortunately, this is not a stable square for our king, and he could end up getting checked, and will get checked like crazy. Starting with rook g1. Where does the king go? King h6? Rook h1. Wherever the king goes, he's going to get checked. If he goes too far away, let's say something like this, if he's moving away, he'll just grab the pawn. Something like this, if he's going too far away like so, we get right behind the pawn. And how are you saving the pawn? You could only do it for one move, but soon enough he will be tracked down. Short story here is that moving the king right now at this moment is no good. Something needs to change. What must that change be? It has to involve the rook. The key move here, a simple way to win this position, is to play rook to g2 as a start. What is this rook doing? It's providing a shield from checks. First we play to rook on g2, and only then get the king to the g file and push the pawn through. Suppose king e6, or in fact let's say rook f1 first, king g8. Black had tried to stop the pawn like this, but we can now give a check and next promote. This is simple enough if we have this type of position present where, both the king, the defending side, the king and the rook are both focused on just one side of the pawn. We can move the rook like so first and make sure that once we do move our king out of the pawn's way, he will be shielded from rook checks. Okay, that's simple enough, but let's consider our initial position, one where there is this, where the rook is guarding one side and the king is guarding the other. What to do now? Clearly we can't play rook to g1. That would not be best. But what we can do is insert this check and rattle the defending side's king position. Now, where does he go? Let's consider e6 as a start. What would we do here? King e8 and then push through next. No successful way to stop that. There is no mating idea by black because we can always block this check. So that would be simple enough. Starting with this check, if the king goes to e6, we go to e8 and push through next. Suppose, however, black goes to c7. What would we do now? Here is the key idea. This method that I'm sharing with you, here's the key move in this position, and that is rook to d4. You'll notice something with that initial position, this one right here. If the king goes out too early, all of these, the rook comes over here and starts giving the check. In this example, there was never a moment where our rook was able to successfully shield those checks or block those checks. However, if we move our rook a little bit closer to our king, if we position our rook in such a way where there are now just two ranks separating the rook and the pawn, he is now in a position to one day shield our king from checks. Let's see how. Rook g2, basically a passing move. There isn't a good move for black to play here. Let's just go with rook to g2. King e7, check, 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 and eventually, after another check, we're able to now block. Our rook is providing a shield against these rook checks. Rook takes rook, king takes rook, we promote next. Okay, so this is really the method here. We want to optimize our rook position before we move our king out of the pawn's way. And we do that by positioning him such that there are two ranks between the rook and the pawn. I'd like to show one other variation. This one here, where after this check, suppose the king does not play to c7, but instead c6. Okay, we yet again can play rook to d4, two ranks still between the rook and the pawn, but in this case, instead of making this bit of a passing move with rook to g2, suppose black says, no, I'm going to attack the rook now that I'm at least a little bit closer. Before he was over here, but now that he's on c6, suppose he goes to c5 and attacks the rook. Now what? Black's idea might be, aha, you could go here, I'll take your rook, and you'll have to try to win this position. No. We can simply meet the threat against our rook and play right behind the pawn. And the next move will get our king out of the pawn's way and then push through. You'll notice the drawback connected with the rook attacking, or the king attacking the rook. If he's attacking the rook, that means he will not be around to guard these two squares. The king will be able to get out in this way. So he could do one of the two. He could either attack the rook, or he could try to stop the king from going to one of these two squares, but he cannot do both. So after rook to f4, I guess this is one of the better tries. Nothing is really a great try at that stage. After king d6, king to e8, and eventually we are going to promote. And in fact, in this case, we will be promoting with check. Okay. I guess one other idea might be after rook to f4. If rook to e1, well, we can get out of the pawn's way on the other side and even go here yet again. Notice our rook is providing a nice shield against any of these file checks, and we'll be able to push through soon enough. Okay? One other variation to cover, and it is this one here. After this initial checking idea and king to c7, let's say we go for this rook lift, rook g2. Now our king comes out, only after we have optimized our rook. Check, check, and suppose at this point black stops with the checks and says, you know what, if I go to e2, white's going to go to f5, and if I check again, there's just going to be that little shielding idea, that little blocking idea. So therefore, once I get to this point here, maybe black doesn't give this next check. Suppose black just kind of makes a waiting move with the king, king to c6. What do we do now? What can we do now? Well, we can insist on interfering with the rook seeing our pawn. We could try to get our rook in between the black rook and our pawn, namely the f5 square in this case. But we just need to be a little bit delicate about how we do that. We want to go to d5 and then f5. However, going to d5 right away is no good, because there is this tactical shot. The rook can capture the pawn, and on king takes rook, there's king takes rook, and this is of course a draw. So the one little adjustment we make here is to simply give a check first. And now whether the king goes to c7, the 7th rank, or the 5th rank, we're going to d5 next. King c5, notice rook d5 is hitting with check, and then we get here next. There's a check. Our rook is shielding ensuing file checks. We're able to push through next. Or, after we insert this check, if the king goes to the 7th rank, now we could go to d5, and the difference here is that the king does not have direct pressure on our rook. Right? He is not there attacking our rook, so there is now not this tactical idea of capturing the pawn and then getting our rook on the next move. There is no pressure on our rook in this position. Okay, so that's just one little variation. Still the same idea, where what we're trying to do is position our rook so that he can one day shield against these rook checks, shield our king against these rook checks. So we position him 2 ranks in between the rook and the pawn, and then we move our king out, and eventually we'll be able to shield our king from the checks and push our pawn through. Now, this method that I just showed is one that we can apply to non-rook pawns. Okay, I just happened to show it with an f pawn, but this method applies to the b, c, d, e, f, and g pawns. Okay, the rook pawns are, you can't, sometimes it's impossible to win against rook pawns, and we're going to have a look at just a few examples as a close. Let's see why it's so tricky, why we can't win in some situations like this. Well, the defensive task is a lot simpler, we can observe. Unless there's some file I, okay, the king isn't going to be able to get out of the pawn's way like so. So the defensive task for black is much easier. We can see both the rook and the king stop the king from getting out in this way, and there isn't a good way for white to, flush both the rook and king away from the g8 and g7 squares in this case. You can do this, but after king here, you're not chasing the rook away. One try might be something like this, and then putting the rook on g8. If rook takes rook, okay, yeah, we recapture and promote, and we're going to win, but you just don't capture. Rook to e1, and how are you dislodging the king? You're not. Okay, you could dislodge one of the two, but not both, is basically what it's coming down to. You could dislodge the king, you could dislodge the rook, but you cannot do both. Let's have a look at a position, another position where the king is just a little further away. Even this position right here is a draw. If the white rook can get to this square right here in just one move from this position, that would be great. If he could just move like a bishop for a moment, this would be a win, but it's going to take him 2 moves. He would have to go to a8 and then get here from, it would have to be white's move again at this point, but it's black on move, and the king could get over just in time, and as we have already seen, this will not amount to anything. Here's an example where it would be a win. The king is now a bit too far away. Now this would be the winning idea for white. Rook a8. King tries to get over in time, but we have rook to g8. Let's say rook h1. Now the king can get out. King g7. We can have a few checks thrown out there. And eventually the king can, all these checks will be exhausted soon enough. There's a check here, check there. White king just zigzags his way out. Rook h1. We now have that promotion square covered by our rook, and we will go on to win. So a little bit trickier, of course, working with the rook pawns. The main feature, however, is ones where we're working with non-rook pawns. In this position type here, again, side with a pawn plus here, stronger side white, king in front of the pawn, defending side's rook having some file influence, interfering with what it is white would like to do, getting the king out of the pawn's way and then pushing through. This is the Lucena position, and again, a very good method is to optimize our rook and ultimately have him act as a shield against rook checks. Okay? So that's all for this video. As always, I hope you got something out of it, and feel free to leave any comments in the comment section below. That's all for now. Take care. Bye.